Okay, I just wanted to close out this series of videos by revising one last time the key claims that Vavova makes in her paper. So here's her reconstruction of the debunker's argument in the form that she finds problematic. So first premise, influence. Evolutionary forces have influenced our evaluative beliefs. And so that's a premise that we've been talking about all term. People say, look, our mind evolved, so the categories that we use to evaluate the world are also evolved, and this is an undeniable fact. Evolutionary forces have influenced our evaluative beliefs. Premise two, on the basis of this fact of influence, people argue that we have no good reason to think that our evaluative beliefs are true. And by that, they mean there is no ground, no argument or evidence that we can find that is not itself shaped by the very evolutionary forces that are of concern here. So we don't have a good reason in the sense that we don't have a good reason that is independent of those beliefs that have been shaped by evolutionary forces. Okay? Because since our entire mind has been shaped by evolution, any reason that we could possibly give will also be problematically inflected with pressures from natural selection. No good. If you have no good reason to think that your belief is true, then you cannot rationally maintain it. So this is just a principle that says that if you cannot give reasons, arguments, and evidence independent of the belief that's been called into question, then you can't maintain that belief. Conclusion, revision. We cannot rationally maintain our evaluative beliefs. So Vavova says, this is a powerful argument, but she says there are two main problems with it. But before I get to those problems, I just want to point out that this is the premise about dialectical burden here. So the debunker is demanding a reason that is independent of the belief called into question, and also independent of the arguments and evidence for that belief. And so Vavova is going to say the two problems with this argument are, one, that the target is too wide. It's targeting all of our evaluative beliefs. So that means that it targets our moral beliefs, but it also targets our beliefs about the nature of reasoning, right? So beliefs about reasoning are evaluative beliefs. So you have beliefs about what constitutes a good reason. You have beliefs about what constitutes good evidence. You have beliefs about what constitutes a good argument. All of those beliefs are evaluative. Notice that I use the word good every time. Good reason, good evidence, good argument. So those are all evaluative beliefs. And this argument, the debunker's argument, calls those beliefs into question. So what this means from Vavova's point of view is that the argument is self-defeating. It undermines the very things that it depends on. So first of all, this argument is not supposed to be a skeptical argument. It's supposed to be an argument that uses science to undermine a particular set of beliefs. So that means it takes for granted that there's a thing called good science, and that good science is reliable, and it produces reliable, true beliefs. But if all of our evaluative beliefs have been called into question, then we have no basis for maintaining the truth of that commitment. So the target's too wide. It targets all of our evaluative beliefs rather than a subset of our beliefs. Right? So someone asked in their questions about this reading, well, why is Vavova's argument a problem at all? Why does the debunker need to have any commitments to moral beliefs in order to make their argument? But that's a misunderstanding of what Vavova is doing. She's not saying that the debunker needs to have his or her moral beliefs intact. She's saying the debunker's argument relies on evaluative beliefs, beliefs about what constitutes a good reason, good evidence, and good arguments. And if she makes an argument that undermines all of our evaluative beliefs, then that argument is self-defeating because it's arguing that we cannot trust the very thing that we must trust in order to take the argument seriously. Okay, I think that's as clear as I can possibly make that point. Sorry if that's not good enough. The second problem she has with this argument is premise three. She thinks that this is a dialectically unreasonable principle, this idea that if you have no good reason, and by that meaning a reason independent of the belief and of the arguments and evidence for the belief, then you can't maintain your belief. And she says this is unreasonable because it means that we basically can't have any reliable sources of knowledge. You can't justify reason without providing evidence where you use reasoning. You can't justify perception without using evidence from perception. You can't justify memory without using evidence. Like, hey, my memory was right this one time. So this principle is dialectically inappropriate. And she says, it's not any good. We can't rely on it. So we should change that premise. So these are the two problems that she has. And her solution is to change premise 1 and to change premise 3. And she says, then you end up with a really good debunking argument. So to fix the problem with premise 1, she gives us the inverse debunking rule. This is the rule that the narrower set of beliefs that your debunking argument targets, the more powerful that argument will be. And to fix the third premise, she says we should replace no good with good, or what she later calls the good independent reason principle. The good independent reason principle doesn't say if you have no good reason. Instead, it says if you have good reason to think that your belief is false, then you cannot rationally maintain it. So that shifts the dialectical burden. So the burden is now on the debunker instead of being on the person who's trying to mount some kind of defense in response to the debunker. So the good version of the error GDA ends up looking like this. So you have this revised version of premise 1, still called influence. It says irrelevant influences, that is, forces that don't bear on the truth of P, have influenced our belief that P. So notice she's given us something narrower there. The belief that she's targeting is some P. So it's not all evaluative beliefs. It's some narrow subset of our beliefs. Premise 2 is adjusted to apply to P rather than all of our evaluative beliefs. So we have good reason to think that we're mistaken about P because irrelevant forces that don't bear on the truth of P, have influenced our belief that P. And then here's her revised version of premise 3. Instead of no good, it's now good, or the good independent reason principle. If you have good independent reason to think that your belief is mistaken, then you cannot rationally maintain it. And again, this is dialectically reasonable because it doesn't declare your beliefs guilty before innocent. Instead, it says our beliefs are innocent and still proven guilty. So the debunker has to give us a good independent reason to think that our belief is erroneous. And she has to do that in a way that doesn't undermine the beliefs that she needs in order to make her argument. And the conclusion is we cannot rationally maintain our belief that P, where P is a belief that's been called into question because irrelevant forces that don't bear on its truth have influenced it, and it is a narrow enough target so that it doesn't undermine our ability to make our own argument. And we've relied here on the good independent reason principle instead of no good. So she fixed premise 1 with the inverse debunking rule. She's narrowed the target to some specific P. And narrow there doesn't necessarily mean the number of beliefs. So I gave you the example of the person who's committed to fundamentalism because he has brain damage. That's not necessarily a small set of beliefs. The fundamentalist might have a ton of beliefs, right? Thousands of beliefs. So that could be targeting a whole raft of beliefs, but it's a narrow subset of beliefs, or it's a narrow kind of belief. It only targets fundamentalists, sort of black and white thinking about the nature of religion. So it doesn't target all evaluative beliefs. It targets just a specific kind of evaluative belief. And so it's narrower in that respect. And then she's fixed premise 3 because she replaced no good, as I said, with the good independent reason principle. So that's a kind of summary of Vavova's key insights. And I wanted to go over that again, just so I made sure that I covered all the relevant bases. I hope that helps. Thank you for your time and attention.